What happened there? Well, good evening, everyone. How are you? Good to see you all. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing fantastic. Let's see if I can get that. There we go. Cheers. Just enjoying a refreshing beverage this evening. Hello, Talio Garo. Good to see you. That's Praxis Talio Garo. But anyway, how are you guys? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing fine. I am doing just fine. I hope you're all hearing me okay. Let's ice some frost giants. I like the cut of this man's jib. He's ready to go, ready to dive in, ready to talk about a little glacial rift. But before we get into that, before we dive straight into that, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Tuesday night's game. And I've once again forgotten the banners. Shame on me. Shame on me. By the way, if I didn't mention this yesterday, and I am pretty sure that I did mention it yesterday, but I'll mention it now. I can now turn on YouTube subscriptions, which is a thing that I'm going to do very soon. So if you want to just get everything in one place, if you want to support the channel, and you don't have to support it any other way than subscribing and clicking the bell icon for notifications. But if you want to support the channel, you'll soon have 3 ways to do that. Subscribe, Start, Patreon, which are scrolling right across the bottom there. You can see that. And soon we'll have YouTube subscriptions up. And I hope those of you who've been sitting on the fence will want to dive right into that as soon as it's available. But I want to talk to you a little bit about Monday's game. I think this is going to angry up some people, possibly. First of all, the game's still going on. Everybody playing in the game is perfectly happy. Everything is hunky-dory. But it's going to be interesting getting some ping back from you guys. So if you haven't been following along, if you're a new subscriber, and by the way, if you are a new subscriber, welcome to you. It's good to see you. What's happening, Imperial Ramblings? I don't know, Chris. I know YouTube takes 30. I know Subscribestar does less. That's about all I can tell you. Long ago, back to the game. Long ago, I elected to take a... no, I'm talking about Monday. Sorry. I meant the Monday game. It goes over into Tuesday. I get my wires crossed from time to time. So the Monday game, I'm referring to the game that is not live streamed, the game that has 11 players in it. Long ago, I started a sort of a mental what if. What if a demon put on a helm of opposite align, and it changed their alignment from chaotic evil to lawful good? Now, as I've said in the past, just to recap, I kind of asked around the web, and there are people, they would explode, they would cease to exist, it wouldn't work, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. There's nothing under the sun that says any of those things would happen. Any being that puts on a helm of opposite align would have their alignment changed to the polar opposite of what it is. A neutral align would shift accordingly. Chaotic neutral to lawful neutral. Neutral evil to neutral good. true neutral to one of those 4. But lawful good would become chaotic evil. Lawful evil would become chaotic good, so on and etc. You get where I'm going with this. So, again, nothing under this description says that a being that puts on the helmet's head will explode. So I said, okay, that happened. That's a thing that happened. Now what does the entity do? It got out of the abyss. It joined the party and has been adventuring with him. I've been running it as an NPC. A lawful good type 5 demon. It goes around in human form. And has recently taken the oaths of paladinhood. Now, if that sounds a little OP, if that sounds a little Mary Sue-ish, if that sounds a little bit like, well, Bill's just working on some kind of weird power trip, I said, no, starts at first level, keeps the hit points, but the combat skill, all that stuff, all the way back to first level. And if it ever uses any of its demonic powers, even to save the party, even to save itself, that's it. It's gone. It'll never have another chance at paladinhood. Won't change their alignment. They'll still be lawful good. So she has been hewing the line with respect to the behavior of paladins. Now, in the party, played by a player, there is a magic user, Venerin, and I've read about him before. Venerin was their high-level magic-using ace in the hole. The party recently ran through Lost Caverns of Sojkonth. Lots of XP, lots of treasures, including the Demonomicon of Igwilv, which the first time they touched it, summoned an Archvile. Yes, I statted up the Archvile from good old Doom and threw it into my AD&D game. Hello, Luther Pendragon. She is human praxis. That's why if she changes herself back to a demonic form, that's it. But anyway, so the party said, you know what? This book is really, really dangerous. We should take it somewhere and we should open the book out in the country where it can affect the city. So out into the country, they took it. Protection from evil, 10-foot radius, etc., etc. They open the book. Another Archvile appears. It's supposed to be Yegzi and Yagza. I don't really like those critters. Heronius is the answer to your question, Praxis. Heronius. God of valor and battle, I figured it worked. Besides, that's the party, the lawful good cleric with whom she is smitten in the party. That's his god of choice. But anyway, open the book. Another Archvile appears outside the protection from evil 10-foot radius. But here's the thing. If you've never played Doom, there's on the phone for Higher Erroneous coincidence, perhaps. If you've never played the original Doom, the creators of Doom have the Archvile capable of basically hitting the player with a flame strike, and when they're not doing that, they're raising up demons that you've killed. The only things they can't raise are lost souls or pain elementals, because they don't leave bodies behind. But they'll run over to wherever you've slain another demon or possessed human and raise them right back up from the dead. It's very dangerous. Fortunately, there wasn't such for it to act on, So it hits the magic user with Flame Strike. He casts Feign Death on himself in the next round, falls over apparently dead. The party deals with the Archvile. After they've dealt with the Archvile, both the cleric casts no alignment on the magic user veteran to see if he got his alignment changed. Jane, the paladin, casts detect evil. Well, guess what? He's neutral evil, and Jane consents is evil. That's where we ended. Come back to the next game. They patch him up because he did take a lot of damage from the first Flame Strike, and now they don't know what to do. Now, in the in-between, the player and I talked about this a lot. I knew that he was running a neutral evil magic user, and that there are 2 paladins in the party. So I talked to him. We talked about alignment change. We talked about, would you go from neutral evil to true neutral, which is where he would have gone if he had changed alignment. There was some back and forth about this. So they get him patched up. They're waiting for the Feign Death spell to end. They're like, well, he's neutral evil. We're going to find out what this is all about. They tie him up, prop him up on a stump after the spell has gone off. And there is a lot of hand-wringing. Jane wants to kill him. Which picture directly behind me? This picture with a snake? That was done by Tracy Lesh. Original D&D artist Tracy Lesh. It was a piece of color art that he offered to TSR to use in D&D products, but they passed on it. That's not the original, by the way. That is that is a canvas print that he got for me. He has the original watercolor. Yeah, Imperial Ramblings. That was basically it. He was like, yeah, it's a fair cop. And so I'm messaging the player back and forth in Discord. Like, so what, is your character thinking of like an on the spot, wow, you guys have kept me alive, et cetera, I'm changing my ways. And he said, oh no, I'm like Loki. I'm enjoying the chaos that I've created this way. And they got Jane to stay her hand. Now, he didn't say this out loud, and I didn't take it that he had said it out loud or anything. But at this point, the characters, yes, the man who made the original Mind Flayer, that is it. There's a lot of back and forth with characters. We can't let him stay with us. He'll sell us out eventually. Well, he hasn't sold us out so far. Well, we can't just let him loose in the world. He's evil. He'll do evil elsewhere. But he hasn't done evil, but he is evil. See, understand, AD&D is a game with very clearly defined labels. This isn't just like, yeah, he was kind of an asshole to me. He was the guy who was stealing people's lunches out of the break room fridge. And Jane, I private messaged the player, and I said, Jane walks over to you, sword in hand, and says, I know what I have to do. I don't know that I should. I don't know that I'm strong enough to do this. And the party's arguing kind of came to a head. And again, I want to make this clear. I'm in full communication with the player. This is not, I'm going to get him. This was not, I want him to leave the game, therefore I'm going to do this. Jane walked over and said, God forgive me, and stabbed him through the heart with her sword and killed him on the spot. And if you're all sitting there in stunned silence, that was pretty much what happened in the game. So, there's some members of the party that now view her as a murderess. There's another portion of the party that is just very upset in general that it came to this. And then there's a good portion of the party that's like, well, it's unpleasant, but it had to be done. So again, I want to make it clear, the player has already rolled up another character. He's good to go with this. He and I were talking through the whole thing. Normally, in running an AD&D game, something so seemingly arbitrary I wouldn't have just dropped that on players. Like, well, you're tied up, you can't move, you can't say anything. My favorite NPC walks over and runs you through the end. Roll up another character. Correct or not, chaotic neutral equals do whatever the hell you want. Kind of randomness, X neutrality, in my opinion, lawful neutral, chaotic neutral, neutral good, neutral evil, are basically the exemplars of their sub-alignment. Lawful neutral doesn't care if you're good or you're bad as long as the rules are followed. There are rules, there are strictures, there are controls. I don't care what you do. You follow the rules or else. Chaotic neutral, exactly the opposite. Be good, be bad. I don't care. Just don't follow a plan. Just be random and completely unpredictable. Randomness. Neutral good. Follow the rules. Don't follow the rules. Just make sure you're doing something good, that you're exalting good for everything and everyone. And if something won't do that, whether it's chaotic or lawful in its evilness, put a stop to it. And neutral evil, in the case of this magic user, follow the rules. Don't follow the rules. I don't care. I just want to make sure that people suffer. And realizing that that was in the party and that he had handled the Demonomicon of Igwilv, she took action. So now there is some in-character discord. We have talked out of character, and everybody's like, whoa, this is a really interesting turn. So this wasn't like, one of those 6 of my players are now ass mad and not going to show up next week kind of things. But it was a very, very interesting thing. When I messaged him and I said, is Venerin going to change his alignment? He's like, oh, no. I'm enjoying this chaos, this woe in Discord. I messaged him back and I said, well, that makes this a whole lot easier for me then. And if Venerin had changed his alignment to true neutral, if he'd said right then, I am abandoning the cause of evil. I have been selfish. I have been hurtful. And I'm no longer at a point where I would sell you guys out just to get ahead. I'm giving that up right now. Takes the level hit, the hit die, and the ability loss. Just boom. she probably wouldn't have done it. Now, Mobius says her god should be good with it. Yeah, I mean, she didn't lose her paladin abilities on the spot. So that's what we went through Monday. And again, the player, Josh, is rolling up another character, or has rolled up another character, a lawful neutral cleric of Foltus. So that should be interesting. Or was it Palor? No, I believe it was Foltus. So good times. Good times were had by all. And I feel like it was just kind of one of those turning points in the game, you know, one of those we'll never forget this night moments. Not because of a battle, not because of, sort of because of the death of a character, but she absolutely, I deemed that she would have felt absolutely compelled. He was evil. What people were talking about, well, let's just let him go. And even a couple were like, well, let's let him stay. He's never hurt us. And in the post game, in the when we were just sitting there chatting, I was like, yeah, so neutral evil, he would have sold the party out at, like, eventually he would have sold the party out. He's like, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, for the right thing, for the right amount of power, absolutely. You know, for a couple of scrolls with some low level spells, no. For immortality, yes. So that was the end of veteran, but the introduction of a new high level cleric into the party. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm interested to see what the players will say or do about this situation. Again, some of the players, their characters, despite being good aligned and despite loving Jane before this happened, now regard her as a murderess. And there were even a couple of calls of, well, am I next? You know, my character is neutral good. Am I next? It is a pretty good campaign, Random Internet Hijinks. So I'm enjoying it. I really am. It was a lot of fun, and it was a good dramatic moment. But one thing I want to emphasize: if he hadn't been tied up, like there was no scripting in my mind, you know, arms and legs bound, and he was blindfolded so he couldn't see anyone to target them with a spell. If you look under hit points and that sort of thing, I mean, you take a 10th level fighter, he gets captured by the evil wizard. Well, a 10th level fighter has on an average 50 hit points. Wizard does not have to stab him in the heart over a dozen times with a dagger for him to die. It's just one thrust, right? And that's what it was here. I don't really agree with you, Luther. I mean, the part about our alignments played correctly, I think, can be a subjective thing at your table, correctly by the book. I think it can be done. But what works for you at your table is, you know, if that's how you feel. By the way, Jack, you got an email coming from me. I got a package from you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So that's where the party stands. Now, they had a quest that they're about to begin. They're about to help a Naga clean a temple that it was set to watch in exchange for all the loot that the monsters who are now using his temple as a fortress. Good point, Chris. Auto-killing a bound captive is part of the abstract nature of hit points. It really and truly is. You know, And even you can think of real world examples, how many times have you heard of like these ultimate badasses on the battlefield who, multiple bullet wounds, stab wounds, grenade fragments, being clubbed upside the head by an enemy's gun, and they still live. You take those same guys, tie them down, one thrust to the heart, they're dead. Hail, Michael Connor, unbreaded lobster. So just kind of want to get your noggins jogging a little bit about that. Just a little something for you guys to think about in the Twilight Zone. But speaking of zones, what alignment would Conan the I have seen that come up several times. Now, I know there was a Conan the Barbarian supplement for either late first edition or early second edition, and I don't know how they had him how they had him aligned, as it were. I mean, I would be tempted to say neutral with good tendencies. Conan was a thief. Would Conan kick in the door of a mud hut or cut open some beggar man's tent and take his last coin or his last bit of food? No, of course not. Would Conan scale the walls of a rich man's house and make off with a bag full of gold and gems? Absolutely. But anyway, just wanted to throw that out there for you guys and let you know what's going on in the Monday night game. But they do have a quest that they are carrying on and forward with. They are going to the assistance of a Naga, and yeah, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I would give Conan neutral good tendencies. Let's talk about Module G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. Now, last time we talked about the G modules, the G module, G1, I talked about how lean it was. And G2 is equally lean. So what do we have here in G2? Well, we have 8 pages of module, and it's not really 8 pages because, once again, we have illustrations and whatnot in here. But what is a glacial rift? If your party stumbles into the magical exit at the end of G1 and finds themselves on the glacier, they will discover what a glacial rift is to their detriment. For the glacial rift is a warren of frozen caverns, accessible only by slippery, windswept ledges, covered in packed snow, constantly lashed by Arctic gales. Immediately upon going there, the party will find themselves taking damage from the cold, unless, for whatever reason, they had reason to prepare for it. Of course, they can find a map and not use the magical means and go overland and be a little bit better prepared. But let's take a look at the structure of the module. I'm going to show you guys the maps in just a second. They don't translate well just to being held up on the screen, but we'll make do. So again, 8 pages. And really, if we look at the illustrations, I would dare say it's more 6 and 3/4 pages, because this counts as a page, but it's not really. Then we have a half column illustration here by, I believe that is David Force. One more time, David Trampier. Well, here's another Dave Trampier illustration. So that's an entire column. That's half a page. And that's an entire page worth of illustration right there in the center. The party is discovering a great relief sculpture. So that's 1, 2.5. So really it's 5.5 pages, or even just 5 2/3 pages, because there's other illustrations. There's a couple of other smaller illustrations. So it's not a big module. Let's dive in. Once again, we have a background. And this is but a short paragraph. Now, the text is fairly dense. I'm not going to say that this is some, 14 or 18 point, very broadly spaced Roman typeface font. It's not. So let's go into the background. Some dozens of leagues to the north and west of the steading of the hill giant chief, module G1 in this series, amidst the tallest mountain peaks, is the stronghold of Grugnir, lord of the frost giants. As frost giants have been among those who have been in the reaving bands, the party is to deal with them as the hill giants have been dealt with. Death and destruction are to be meted out to the frost giants in the same measure they gave to the peoples before. Those members of the party who have participated in the raid upon the steading will know that the most important mission, however, is to garner intelligence as to what or who is behind the unholy alliance of the hill, stone, frost, and possibly other types of giants as well. Any such information gathered is to be delivered by the fastest means to the nobles sponsoring the expedition, while the party is to follow up clues as to prosecute the offenders. Any treasure taken is to be kept by the party. This is their reward for the perils they must face. And they are bound to face many in the weird ice caves and rocky caverns of the Jarl. The evil root is deeply grown here, far worse than among the hill giants. Now, there are notes for the Dungeon Master. Yes, Chris, Tramps from Moraz is amazing. There are notes for the Dungeon Master, however. There is considerable information herein which is descriptive and informative with respect to what the players see and do. Note that this does not mean that you, the Dungeon Master, must surrender your creativity and become a mere script reader. Now, that's important, guys. Let me tell you something. Way too often do I see complaints leveled at older modules for being too lean on the ground. Look, it's up to you guys. It's up to you as a Dungeon Master. You have to read these modules as a framework upon which you lay things. And you do have to read them. You can't just bring them home, rip the shrink wrap off them, and sit down and start to play them. You're not at a tournament with a limited amount of time, how they were introduced. You have the luxury of building into these modules ever more detailed parts. And you should do that. They're beautiful. Make them more beautiful. I mean, imagine you're a hot rodder and you go out and you buy the most powerful car on the lot. Do you drive it home and fold your hands and say, I'm satisfied? No. You get a tuned carburetor. Maybe you go get a blueprinted engine, new tires, tweak the suspension. If you're a serious PC Master Race gamer and you bought a pre-built just for the relative ease of getting a case, power supply, motherboard, video card, CPU, and RAM all in the same place, would you be happy with? No, you'd reinstall a clean install of Windows, get rid of their bloatware, overclock your video card, more or faster memory. That's really what you have to do with the classic modules. And Gary tells you so right there. So it talks about what to do. If the party, for example, if they decide to retire between forays into the rift, they may use the hidden cave as a base, their hidden cave as a base, if they have seen to its provisioning. Of course, magic users must have their magic spell books in order to regain spells used when the party does retire to set, rest, and recuperate. Experience points should be awarded for treasure taken out and monster slain. Another little thing. The Remorhaz does look like a selfie, Luther. That's another little thing. If the party's falling back, it's telling you, the Dungeon Master, award XP for treasures taken and monsters slain. Trust me, if the party's falling back like that, it's a lot easier than trying to keep copious notes and give it all to them at the end. Plus, you may have some of the party at this point able to train without having to go find an expert to train them. They'll still have to pay the treasure to a guild or something like that. But if you're not giving them out XP that they're winning, they may not have a chance till the end of Q1 to train. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. And then it talks about if you plan to continue the campaign. Well, of course we plan to continue the campaign, Gary. So let's take a look at the upper areas. And I hope this comes across. So I talked about this when we talked about G1. G1 has an upper fortress that the characters can creep around, 100 feet down, turn left, turn right, couple of doors on the left, 10-foot, 20-foot wide hallway, 20-foot ceilings. All very simple, all very, for lack of a better term, Euclidean. Oh, Dungeon Masters. If you've gotten to this point, and you've had the occasional cavey, twisty, caverny part, so you started way back once upon a time with Keep on the Borderlands, and you remember the Cave of the Owlbear, the Forsaken Cave, the Minotaur's Lair. Well, here your skills as a DM are going to be stretched. You can put your Dwarven Forge aside. It won't help you here. And I hope this will show up, because the entirety of G2 is natural caverns. As the poet once said, you are in a maze of twisty passages, all alike. It is at once less and more fiendish than the caves of S4. So there's all of these caves and caverns. And generally speaking, they are in zones. Over here, in this section of the map where my index finger is pointing, there are 6 caves. They don't go to a 7th cave area. The party, once it manages to not die climbing on the cliffs outside, and they can if they fall into the rift, to get into areas 7 and 8, they have to risk their necks out again. And there are so many interesting rooms like that. But the rift itself even is covered with possibilities for adventure. If the party goes down into the rift, they can encounter a Remoraz for the first time. Beating the Remoraz without melting it, without melting its lair or something, will yield a very worthy treasure. And then, as with the Steading and the Hill Giant Chief, there is a separate dungeon section here. Larger caves, a little more manageable for the DM, but just as mazy. Now, if your players have now relaxed a little bit, maybe they've been able to find and free the female storm giant. The giantess is a potent ally if you can convince her to stay with the party. But maybe the party has begun to relax somewhat. Yeah, that weird Lovecraftian thing we found in G1, that was kind of strange. It was just Gary throwing us for a loop, or maybe even just the DM throwing us for a loop. But here we start to get signs that things are not okay. Because here we start to encounter equally weird things. There is a ton of treasure which is next to impossible to find if the party is not, as the Viking Hat GM says, ripping this dungeon apart brick by brick, or snowball by snowball, as the case may be. That's just one example. The other are strange tokens. Nothing as weird and off-putting as the strange temple, but there are strange tokens. And if your party was neglectful in it completely dealing with all of the hill giants, some of them may well be here. And they will have told the Jarl exactly what to expect. But there's enough for the players to deal with right here. We have the emissaries, 5 ogre magi. We have the Vaulted Cavern with a large ancient male 56 hit point white dragon asleep on its treasure. And its medium-sized, very old female, his mate. Now, one thing he doesn't touch on is whether or not they are, well, it does mention that he's asleep, but whether or not they're capable of speech or spell casting, that's up to you. Does it ever give the name of the Lord of the Ogre Magi? It does not, Luther. It does not. But there is enough brutal danger abounding here. This module is bad news for the unwary party. Now, something that you can take away from this, even if you're like, whoa, this is not... My party's nowhere near powerful enough to challenge this module yet. Something you can check out is on page 3, and it is Giant's Bag Contents. Now, this may sound a little bit too generous for you, but I love it because it adds some flavor to Giants. Just have him be the same guy from White Plume Mountain if he escaped from the party then. Oh, that's interesting. I guess possibly. In my campaign, he did not escape. So this is a random die roll you can throw here. Old axe blade used as a hand chopper. 1 to 4 small boulders for throwing. Bowl and spoon, tin or pewter, battered. Brass items, various and sundry, bent. Caltrops, iron, large, 1 to 6. A hard cheese, slightly moldy and stinky. A shabby wool or hide cloak. Comb and hairpins made of bone. An iron cooking pot. A drinking horn, a skinning knife. Linens, various soiled and patched. A haunch of meat. 100 to 400 copper pieces. 20 to 80 silver pieces. 10 to 40 gold pieces. A worthless mangy fur pelt. 10 to 120 foot long coil of very strong rope. A small bag or box of salt. Remember, that's valuable, guys. Old sandals. A skin of wine or water, full. Teeth or tusks, animal, no ivory value, 1 to 8 of those. So that's just something that you can kind of flavor your Giant's bags with. I think you should take that away from the game and use it, or from this campaign, and use it in other parts of your game. I do highly recommend doing that. But again, it's not all bloodletting. See if I can find... there's that Yeti I was telling Bob about. Hill giants, stone giants. A small box of salt going by human or giant's mindset. I think a frost giant is 15 to 18 feet tall, so I would assume a small box would probably be 2 to 3 pounds. You know, think of like a lunchbox sized, you know, about like that, full of salt. The Remoraz Cave. Here we go. Page 7. Encounter 8. Prison cavern. Several torches light this place dimly. A storm giantess, 94 hit points, who is comely to those of her ilk, and is strong and fights as if she were a male, is chained on the north wall with huge manacles at wrists and ankles. A fur rug in the middle of the place bears a table and 2 chairs. Upon the table are heaps of food on golden platters, 500 platinum pieces each, times 6. In silver bowls, 100 gold piece each, times 3, and 2 flagons of ivory set with gems, 6 gems each, base 100 gold pieces, set to tantalizing her into submitting to the Jarl's will and becoming his layman. Which, by the way, a layman is your side piece whom you cheat on your wife with in Old English. This Durance Vial makes her a friend to any who rescue her, although evil characters will cause this aid to be of brief duration. So essentially, your party makes it down to Area 8 and frees her, and they've got a really, 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 really powerful ally there. I've got kind of a new setup, and I want to see if in the documents on this bad boy, let's see. Okay, I'll have to get, maybe it's in documents. No. All right, I'll have to get my my monster manual for next time and have it handy. I'll look on the USB drive. Let's see if I got the PDF on the USB drive. I don't think I do. There we go. Okay. Let's take a quick look here. And look at what a storm giant can do and how helpful that is to a party. But again, guys, 5.5 pages. This thing is packed to the brim with adventures. You should have at least 15 pages of notes for this sucker. So if the party rescue that storm giant, frost giant, 15 feet tall. So yeah, that, lunchbox sized amount is probably a small box to them. Just do a little zoom in on that. Let's see. Unlike other sorts of giants, storm giants do not hurl rocks, for they have magical properties and spells which they employ instead. A storm giant is able to hurl a lightning bolt of 8 eight-sided dice effect once per day. All storm giants are able to levitate twice per day, lifting weights up to 30,000 gold pieces. That's 3,000 pounds to you and me, equivalent in addition to their own body weight. So they can lift themselves and 3,000 pounds of whatever. They're able to breathe normally underwater as desired, When they desire to do so, they are able to perform any of the following spells one at a time, once per day. Predict weather, call lightning, 3 bolts of 10 to 15 six-sided dice each. Control winds, weather summoning. When aroused for combat, it is probable that a storm giant will summon a storm and call lightning, for this weather is most favored by an angry storm giant in battle. They are not harmed by electrical energy, even such discharges as blue dragon breath. They are chaotic good, and they're big. So if you figure that old Grungnir there is, let's see if we can find his notes real quick. Barracks, visitors, provisions. Emissaries, guests, prison, servants. And I don't see it to hand, but I would imagine Grugnir is not as tall as she potentially is. Grugnir likes a big girl. Frost giants are the nickels of giant kind. Fire giants are smaller but stronger, like dimes. Okay. Greetings, Dungeon Minister. So once the party has hacked and slain and hewn their way through G2, and Dungeon Masters, take note, this should not be easy. You've got 5 Ogre Magi. You've got Yeti. You've got all of the Frost Giants and their nastiness. Grugnir, who himself is a serious badass. A mated pair of white dragons. It's just a tough module. Here we are. The Jarl's private chamber. Now, I just said Grugnir fights as a cloud giant with respect to damage. 6 to 36 plus 4 for the sword. That's 10 to 40 points of damage every time he hits. This is no joke. But again, he only has 80 hit points. DMs and potential players. Luther complaining because I haven't shown enough pictures. If Grugnir is too much of a challenge, make sure that the players have got a little bit of help if they've done the right things. And now, if they flipped the Storm Giantess the middle finger and said, haha, you got caught, beyond thought, and leave her alone, don't have her break in at the last minute. But if she's with the party, play it to the hilt. He wanted to do stuff with the Storm Giantess, rather. And what do we know about the smiling face, Dungeon Minister? When the DM smiles, it's too late. More picks. There's not a lot of picks in the book, in the module. There's actually fewer in the G123 against the Giants. I'll find some artwork and share it with you guys. Hang on a second. Find something that isn't shopping. Here, let me see if I can add this. That's not working. Go away, you. There, okay. So that's just a repeat of the cover. Some adventurers, either surprising or getting surprised by some adventurers there. I'm going to zoom that in a little bit. And just a little bit of art showing the Giants bag that I was talking about. And it's not just one item, by the way, on that. That's 5D4. That's 5 to 20 of them. Now, you might have noticed my copy on the cover has the silver shield of the TSR Silver Anniversary boxed set. When I bought my box set, it had 2 copies of G2 in it and no copy of G1. I was crestfallen. And of course, Wizards of the Coast did not have any more facsimile copies of G1 to give me to replace it with. But they were more than happy to offer me some free stuff. I passed. Not being a smart aleck or anything, I was just like, no, I really want some AD&D stuff. And they understood. But a good fellow from the Achium said, hey, I'm in Italy. There's an item I bought, or there's an item I want to buy that doesn't ship to Italy. If I buy it and pay for it and have it sent to your house, if you send it to me, I'll send you a copy of G1. He was paying for all of the shipping. I said, sure. I got it. I sent it to him. A few weeks later, I got a silver anniversary copy of G1, and I was very happy. So thank you, Axel. This is a big stone tableau that the party can find. It extends over a couple of pages. This is Dave Sutherland, the late great Dave Sutherland, his work there. The Remoras. Now, you'll miss it if you blink. This is so creepy and organic that I'm like amazed it's not Errol Otis's artwork. But note the feet of an unlucky adventurer going down the thing's throat. There's a fire beetle lighting up the Jarl's antechamber. Oh, and his lady is there too. She fights as a fire giant. He fights as a cloud giant. And 2 giant winter wolves. Look at all that loot. Chest 2 holds 3,800 platinum. Chest 5 has 15,570 gold pieces. Box number 4 has a covering of old socks, but underneath are 8 potions. Speed, extra healing, delusion, storm giant strength, poison, oil of slipperiness, healing, and human control. Coffer 2 has 9 pieces of jewelry, 1,000 to 10,000 GP value each. Coffer 6, contact poison on it, 198 gems. Those are base values, by the way. So 104 base 50 value gems. Remember when I said you needed to take a lot of notes? That's why. You have an entire evening's work right there, just in the gems. And then there's some hidden treasure, but look at the map, guys. This is over here, this section. See if no, it won't let me highlight it. But here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And it's completely cut off. So you're going to have to go out, go around, and then come back down over here to get in the caves. Like I said, DMs, leave your Dwarven Forge at home. If you're gonna mini this out, you're gonna need to draw it out on a battle mat. And these are the lower caves. Mostly less dangerous, but still highly suspect. 21A. Let's see. Oh, and there's the back piece, kind of an aerial view in case you're having a hard time visualizing what the rift might look like. The shaded area there is the bottom, and then there's the cliffs, of course, that lead into the dangerous, dangerous caverns. (21) and 21A, yes. So that's just kind of a glimpse at it. Whoops. I just turned that display capture off. Tweet. There we go. I cast you guys into an infinite maze. It is very cool. A disgusting adventure. He's repelling. Oh, that's so bad. I'm surprised I didn't say it. Wow. Wow. You're going to Photoshop my face onto the frost giant. Well, I guess there's worse things than that. In AD&D, it says 1 inch is equal to 10 feet. Yes, that is correct. That's 1 inch on your tabletop, not 1 inch on the map. There, it's a quarter inch is equal to 10 feet. Because here's where the non-repro blue works great. You won't find 5e art where the characters have met their end. Just sad what has evolved from what was. Yeah. You missed the notification. You'll rewatch what you missed later. Well, got to stay on top of these things, guys. Got to stay on top of them. So I hope you are paying attention. G2 can be a really brutal module. And in case you're wondering, yes, it goes to G3. Now, the little bit of weirdness and the moderate bit of oddness, and I mean, G1 has the weirdness. Like the hint that everything is not okay. It's not just a standard dungeon crawl. Oh, great. You doing your Arnie impressions there, Ricky? But G2 is the frozen, impenetrable ball of iron-like ice that is in the middle of G1 and G3. It is just a tough dungeon. No weird temples. No drow yet. I see you. I see you guys are like, what about the drow? Wait for it. So G1, it's not kidding around. People talk, ooh, Tomb of Horrors, that'll really wipe out a party. Tomb of Horrors is like, it analogy fails me. It's like negotiating your way through a trap-laden dungeon. Assume everything is dangerous, search carefully, but there's really no monsters in it to speak of. This module, this is 8 pages of TPK. This is where you have to bring in your Nick Saban coached defense to make it out of that module alive. You absolutely positive. If a party goes in on their back foot in that module, and a bunch of them get swept off and killed by falling into the bottom of the rift, which is not a given, by the way. The snow can soften their impact somewhat. You are going to get a party hurt and killed. I mean, there's ways to avoid it. There's absolutely ways to avoid it. I'm not saying to send a 7th or 8th level party into this mess. I'm just saying that it is very difficult. It is full, without going full ham on spells and stuff like that, it is a very, very, very difficult module from a martial combat standpoint. Grugnir throwing out 10 to 40 points of damage every time he hits. And guys, he fights as a cloud giant. He fights as a 15 hit die monster. He's gonna hit you. He's gonna hit you. Even with protection spells, even with prayer. And his wife, she's going to be equally bad news. And if you've roused it up so that you can turn loose the winter wolves on you, it's going to be very bad. So players, first of all, DMs, stick it in and break it off at the hilt. If the party gets to this point and you want to know what they're made of, you really want to know what their tactical thinking is like, you really want to put them in the championship game of fights, it's G2. It is a meat grinding. It is a brutal, brutal contest. If the dungeon masters, if you elect to let the giants give the players a breather, yeah, they'll probably win. Eventually. But they're going to take casualties. Play those frost giants. Send in the, convince the ogre mages to go in against the frost giants. Or to go in against the players, rather. With the frost giants backing them up. If the party grinds their way past all of the frost giants, the Yeti, the ogre magi, the other giants backing the frost giants up, the white dragons, if they get to Grugnir, they're really going to be depleted. It's going to be like a shape charge burning it. So if you've ever seen like a there's a guy on YouTube, he's like SV simulations, and he does like computer modeling simulations of armor piercing rounds punching through different thicknesses of actual military composite armors, like a big shaped charge, like from a tow missile, hits and it goes in and it burns, and you can watch in 3D the effect of the simulation. And what finally gets through and does all the damage is this tiny little amount. Everything else out here blasted away by the impact, and then it goes in and it burns a hole through the armor. But what burns a hole through the armor is just like a pencil diameter. That's what's going to be left by the time the party gets to Grugnir and his wife, if you, the DM, have played it just right. And you should play it to the hilt. Players should remember G2. This is the no kidding, there I was module. No kidding, there we were. We had fought the White Dragon, lost some of our characters. There were 10 of us at the beginning of the fight. There were 6 of us. We start looking through the treasures. We're getting ready to cast Raise Dead and get those characters out of there. When we hear a bellow from the end of the cavern, and what comes out but another White Dragon? We rescued those treants. We rescued those 5 treants that said Grugnir was getting ready to turn them into fine smelling wood over which to smoke his fishes and meats. We were halfway back to our cave hideout when one of them starts cackling madly and then vanishes, and all the others follow suit. And that's when the cone of cold spells started hitting us from every direction. It was just me and Aurora and Josh and James left. We used the last of our healing spells. We cast a blast. We went into the next cavern, and there he sits with his wife, and he jumps up, grabs his sword, orders his wolves on us, and she starts throwing giant boulders out of her belt pouch. That should be what your players take away from Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. Guys, this module, this is X-Men Annual number 1. This is Red Storm Rising. This right here is your Star Wars. It is one of the toughest fighting modules. Not puzzling modules, not trap avoiding modules. That module is what everybody claims that all D&D is. All the old adventures are just hack and slay. Well, people who say that are wrong and dumb, but this one right here is that way. And it is awesome because of it. It's the Led Zeppelin 4 of AD&D modules, okay? Don't hold back. If the party's tough enough, if they're staying with it and they make it through a couple of encounters and they're like, yeah, we're going back to our cave and we're healing up. We've got a Rod of Resurrection, or, our cleric's a high enough level, he can cast Raise Dead, and we can go in with multiple bless spells and prayer spells, and he's going to chant. And our thief has a +4 dagger in one hand and a dagger of venom in the other, and a ring of invisibility. If they go in and they play it to the fullest of their abilities, they can make those giants' asses quit. And they're going to have a lot of fun doing it. And it is a phenomenal blast to DM that module. It is an absolute, I mean, just, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I've only run it 3 or 4 times. So if you've never played it and you want to just throw something at an AD&D party, say you want to get together for a weekend with some friends over the summer, and you want to introduce them to AD&D, and you want nonstop action, not terribly much, on the puzzle solving parts. You want nonstop action with a high level party? Right here, guys. Right here. Run this module. Run this module for them. They won't forget it. And if you followed up to this point with the discussion, instead of sitting over there in the audience in the peanut gallery making puns, I see what you guys are up to over there. Then that G3 is coming. Well, Bill, you've told us this thing is the Super Bowl, the national championship game, the World Series, and the Final Four all rolled into one. Is G3 a letdown? No. Trust me. Trust me. Next week, we're going to discuss G3. Monday night is going to be given over to G3. The months of play, or at the very least, the weeks of play that you've gotten out of G1 and G2, everything that your players have learned, all the leveling that the characters have been able to do, all the things that they've acquired, all of that fully comes to a head in G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King. And you guys, I think, are going to, if you've enjoyed what I've had to say about this, you're going to get a big kick out of that. Random Internet Hijinks asks, what is my all-time favorite module? Oh gosh, that's like asking which of my kids I love the most. So this is a completely across the board tie, because I can't just say one module, I can't just give you one module. Keep on the Borderlands. What a great module Keep on the Borderlands is. How many campaigns in Homegrown Universes, Mistar Unknown World, Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance. How many campaigns have started with B2? And it's not just by dint of being the pack-in module. It is so expertly written. So many opportunities. So much to open up. Oh, yes, Luther, it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. Trust me. I know. And we're going to go into that. Don't you fear. I mean, it would be remiss of me to not include the Giant series in that tied for first. I mean, they're just phenomenal. Yes, Dungeon Minister, you do need to run Keep on the Borderland for your boys. But run it as it was meant to be run, with advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I'm kidding. G1, G2, and G3. What's not to love? I love the thinking aspects that come with S1. You really, really have to think. You really have to be thinking on your toes in S1. But again, good players of 6th or 7th level can make it through S1 with a minimum number of casualties and a minimum amount of fuss. And that's not metagaming. That's not, I don't mean players with 6th level characters who've played the module over and over again. That's just people who are listening to what you as a DM are saying. When you sit there and you say, you go into a room, it is an apparent dead end. Well, we're going to search the far wall of this room for secret doors. Fine. 59, 58, 57, 56. What are you doing? 55. I'm counting backwards. 54. Just to let you know, 52. I know I skipped 53. 50, they should be freaking out. They should, they shouldn't be standing there. Oh, he's just messing with our heads, and then keep doing things. And then when the block lowers into place and they're trapped forever because they weren't paying attention, smart players will walk right out of that room. They will walk right out of that room. And that's why S1 is eminently survivable by good players. S2, White Plume Mountain, encapsulates everything that's fun about Gonzo AD&D. It has combat, it has traps, it has weird riddles, it lifts things from other fantasy tropes. It's got a giant crab inside a soap bubble dome that if you burst, everybody dies, but you have to fight the giant crab. Everything about S2 is just fun. It is the classic Walt Disney World of dungeon modules, and if you've never played it, I recommend you play it. You should play it. S4 and WG4 tied together because S4 is, of course, Lost Caverns of Sojkamp that deals with the chastening of Drelsna and the recovery of the Demonomicon of Igwil, but darker and deeper is one of Gary's elder elemental beings. And elemental, I don't mean earth, air, fire, water. I am talking about fundamental, primordial evils. Tharizdun. The Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun. Honestly, TSR should have put both of those modules into a box set and made it the whatever campaign because they're wed together. I love S4 and WG4. Yeah, those are all my first place ties, but I got to tell you, the modules that come second and third and so on, like if I rate those all a 10, like the second placeholder is a 9.9999 repeating. That is correct. Yes, Mar. So I hope that non-answer helps answer your question. And I don't have any particular tack, any particular module design. Luther, we are probably going to tackle that on Monday because tomorrow night we are going to have a guest on. And Friday night, we're playing Gamma World. And I don't think the preamble before Gamma World is really enough time. And you guys will see why. G3, we got 2 8-page modules. G3 is double the page count, but it is more, way more than that content-wise. So we're Monday night, we'll do like a 7:30 start Monday night and just devote 2 hours to G3. The worst D&D modules. Okay. Now, do you mean Dungeon Minister remakes of old modules in 5e and No Giant series? I'm as weirded. I mean, I can't help but think that what Joe Goodman has got a, I mean, you guys saw that car battery sized T1 to 4 mess, right? That honestly, he could have just released a hardback of just the AD&D's T1 to 4 instead of, the less I say about it, the better. But I can't imagine that he doesn't have some engine block sized rendition of G1, G2, and G3 in the works. But we'll see, I guess, right? Worst is in not fun, poorly. Okay, all right. Because as I have favorite AD&D modules, and as we arrange them in a linear fashion, we must have a bottom to our top. Even if I say all of the modules except one are tied for first, by default, that makes the one module that is second the worst in that context. But the Lost City module, okay, Luther, sure. I sure will. I think I have a copy of it here somewhere. Let's see. Worst designed. Now, I have to give. All right. When my friends and I talk about bad movies, we talk about there are bad movies. Manos, The Hands of Fate is a bad movie. It is not a good bad movie. I mean, only Mystery Science Theater 3000 can make Manos, The Hands of Fate watchable. There are bad good movies. Dune is a bad good movie. All of the various pieces of David Lynch's Dune are marvelous. Yet we have to take a step back and be objective and say that it does not succeed on some critical levels. There are good bad movies. Plan 9 from Outer Space is a good bad movie. And then, of course, there are good movies. Anything. Star Wars is a good movie. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a good movie. Akira is a good movie, right? Darn right, Chris. So I have to give the special award of the worst great module to the late Len Kafka's L3 Deep Dwarven Delve, which came with the silver anniversary set. And here's why. It has nothing to do with Len, and it has everything to do with Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast found Len Kafka's manuscript in TSR's junk when they bought TSR. They contacted Len and said, we're doing this box set. We want to release one final AD&D module, one final new AD&D module. Would you consider polishing it up? Len said, absolutely. Blood of Heroes, it's good call, Praxis. Len said, absolutely. And so he wrote it and he mailed it to them. They received it. He FedExed it. They received the FedEx. They lost it. And rather than ask him for another manuscript, they published the fragmentary manuscript that they just said, well, we'll just go with this. We're not getting the full L3. So you people who've scrambled to get L3, that has a special award for worst great AD&D module. Now let's talk about just bad presentation. Gargoyles. The title sounds pretty awesome, right? Gargoyles. You literally help gargoyles get their wings back. Puppets. Again, sounds like an interesting title. Puppets. It's a module about evil puppets. The Forest Oracle is notoriously bad because it was very clearly written by multiple people who didn't read the sections prior to the ones they wrote. So there's literally points in paragraphs where you're talking to one NPC, and then in the next paragraph, it's many NPCs. For different reasons, I think the Dragonlance modules are among the worst. They are the definition of awful good movies. Not awfully good, not that's awful good. No, they're awful, but they were meant to be great. There's a lot of movies out there that people just absolutely love and just dragged me to see, and I was just like, this is unwatchable shit. I'm gonna get demonetized now. And in sitting through them, I was just like, I am so wasting my time. This is not good at all. And people around me are just having a ball, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I'm not the target. I'm clearly not the target audience for this. I'm not enjoying this in the least. Avatar made like what, $1.4 billion with a B. And the Dragonlance modules are just like that. They're high production value. Everybody loves them. They're some of the most popular D&D modules. They're high concept, and I think they are just terrible. They are just terrible. Yes, Praxis, I went to see Captain Marvel. The best part about Captain Marvel was when she got punched in the face by Thanos in the last Avengers movie, Endgame. Kapow. The people in theater cheered. But anyway. But the Dragonlance modules are absolutely on railroad tracks. The whole series is just on railroad tracks. The modules state clearly in them, if you're running this as part of the series, DL1 to DL15 or how many ever they covered, if a character dies here, doesn't matter how they died, doesn't matter if they made their resurrection survival roll, make sure they come back. Divine favor of the gods, whatever, they have to come back. They have to come back. We have sheet music for a song in one of the modules. We have a fried potato recipe in one of the modules. Exactly what I didn't ask for in any of my D&D modules. Didn't ask for it. Didn't want it. Didn't need it. Wanted dungeons. Wanted monsters. Didn't get it. Got sheet music. Got a potato recipe. That's bad. That's just not good. The Forgotten Realms, you're not off the hook either. The Forgotten Realms modules, aka, let's just stand back because Elminster will do it. Modules full of instructions. If the party's losing, have Elminster show up and save them. Guys, if you're running a D&D game if you're running an AD&D game and you're doing that to your players, you're putting them on railroads, you're having great value Gandalf show up and save them because you're not a dungeon master. You're playing Mad Libs with something that Ed Greenwood wrote or that Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss wrote. Now, if you got them and you're like, these are pretty maps and I kind of like the concepts, but you're like, I'm following these. I've been working on the railroad. You're a poor DM. If your players break a module, if they find some new and interesting way to win that wasn't laid out as part of a plot, and your response is to read what the module says to do, and the module says to have your characters picked up by a giant bird and flown to the next objective, or that Elminster comes to save them, you're a poor dungeon master. You can fix it. But those are all examples of poor modules. Now, there are modules that, again, when we rate the modules that I listed off at being the top of the line, literally the top of the line, I'm going to get back to cameos in just a second, Chris, because you raise an interesting point. I'm going to come back to you in a minute. The modules that are darn near as good, like the A series is a good second tier module series to me. Like second seed, I would say almost. Like we'd play a tournament. We do tournament brackets, and the A series fills up 4 seats in the second seed, and then you've got, of course, X1 and X2, right? B1, C1 and C2, S3, Mordenkainen's Fantastic Adventure, Isle of the Ape, Beyond the Magic Mirror, Gary's EX modules, EX1 and EX2. No, I get it. Yeah, a lot of people love B1. So anyway, does Elminster really show up in modules as a Deus Ex Machina? Yes. Now, I am all about cameos. I love that the idea that the party could potentially bump into Mordenkainen. I mean, hell, my Monday night game, which, by the way, is coterminous with the Tuesday night game. Just letting you Tuesday night players in on that. In my Monday night game, the party regularly crosses paths with Robilar as he spends time in the city of Greyhawk. So I don't mind, but like Robilar would never say, no, I'll fight this monster. You folks stand back. The party's getting their asses kicked in G2. Mordenkainen, Bigby, and Tensor are not just going to teleport in and save them. I'm not going to steal my character's spotlights for a cool cameo. They get back to the city of Greyhawk after the G1, G2, G3, D1, D2, D3, and possibly Q1. Well, they may meet them. CM6, where Chaos Reigns. Never played it. Chaos Reigns. So I hope that kind of answers questions about what I think are the best modules and what I think are the worst modules. The worst modules are modules that are just so jank in their execution. It's like you're talking about a room that isn't on the map. Or, you know, at this point, the characters must use the sun stored on the soul, the sun sword on the soul gem. The sun sword doesn't appear anywhere in the module. There's no module preceding this. There's nothing called a sun sword anywhere in AD&D where they could have picked one up. You don't mention this in the beginning notes. There's not in the new magic item section, there's not something called a sun sword. The heck are you talking about, module author? Stuff like that makes for bad modules. I think there are modules that are salvageable that I don't like. Desert of Desolation, not crazy about it. Workable. And this is where I watch like the number of people that are subbed to the channel just like tank. Ravenloft, not a fan. But I think it's workable into a scenario. I think you can make it work. They're not terrible modules. They just require a lot of elbow grease. Goes back to that car analogy. I think I6 and I3 through I5 are they're cars that you buy off the car lot and you immediately got to throw a wrench to make them do what you want, to not just be what they are. I'll see you, Luther. Take care. You heard the man. Give Bill super chats. That's what he said. Anyway, I just here's a special. This is a bad module that I'm actually going to talk about for our Patreon viewers. That's coming up real soon. Is Up the Garden Path, or as I like to call it, Up Yours Garden Path. It's bad all the way around. Now, unlike Ed Wood with his movies, the creator at least says, yeah, it's not set anyway. This is not a Greyhawk mod. This is not a, Forgotten Realms mod. This is just, don't take this seriously. It's just meant as a bit of fun. That redeems it somewhat. I actually originally did an extremely caustic discussion about ST1 Up the Garden Path, but I think it was too mean-spirited. So the coming review of ST1 Up the Garden Path, it is a bad module. It is irredeemably bad. You're not missing anything by not seeing it. And honestly, if you Google ST1 Up the Garden Path PDF so you can read it, you're not going to say, now I want to seek a copy out. If you had the thousands of dollars that it commands and its rarity I would say, for God's sake, get a white box OCE set instead. Get a copy of Lost Temocon. Get, Lost Sojconf. Something, anything, not that. Yeah, I know. They really kind of exploded i6. Wasn't there another I module, like a Ravenloft 2? And then they did a campaign setting. And then in the D20 glut, before they sank, basically they were hit amidships by the resurgence of D&D and the lack of the fractious weirdness of late Vampire the Masquerade, but White Wolf actually started a little section of their company that was doing D&D adventures, and they got the license to do Ravenloft stuff, which made sense because you've got Strahd and you've got Barovia and you've got, you know, all that so on and such happening, that, you know, it made sense to have White Wolf look at it. And White Wolf was also doing their own sword and sorcery imprint of D20 fantasy adventures, but they also were doing the Kung Fu anime game Exalted that made people so mad because everything was sexualized, and then other people were mad because it wasn't sexualized enough, and it just went back and forth, and it kind of crumbled and imploded. House on Griffin Hill, Ravenloft 2. Thank you, Random Energy Hijinks, for clarifying. But I can't really, I can't really say it's one of my favorite D&D things of all time, because it's not. I don't hate it. Again, I could stick that in Greyhawk. Stick that way high up in a mountain range somewhere. I would probably create a mountain range, if there's not one already, somewhere near the Great Kingdom. That seems to kind of fit. Or near the Horned Society, or even in the Ayuz. Maybe the mountains above the Rift area. That could all be a lot of fun. I'll admit to having played Vampire a couple of times, but it's not really my cup of human blood. They did do a Street Fighter storytelling game. So this is what I have from people who are regular fans of the storyteller system and the first few iterations of White Wolf games, that White Wolf came out and said in the press somehow, look, all of our storytelling properties are interrelated. Vampire, werewolf, mage, the Frankenstein monster one, the mummy one, it's all related. It all interweave, all of the worlds intermesh. And people are like, all of our storyteller games are intermeshed. All of them. You heard us, all of them. So the Street Fighter universe in your Street Fighter role-playing game exists coterminously with Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf, the Scratching, Mage the Ascension, Demon the Demoning, and all that, and so on, etc. And they were like, but they stuck to their guns, according to White Wolf fans, and said, yes, absolutely. White Wolf was correct. I've heard some stories about White Wolf, man. I have heard some stories. I'll just say that. But I wasn't there. I don't know if they're true or not. I can only speak to my own personal life experiences. I can only speak about the things that I do. Like, for example, I was thinking about this today. I just want to break my arm patting myself on the back for a second. I do a show about classic Dungeons and Dragons 5 nights a week. That just kind of blows my mind, doesn't it? Yours? 5 nights, not like a new video every Wednesday. 5 nights a week. I'm here, you're here, we're here. If you had told me that 1,000+ people and a core of 15 to 30 in an audience would sit and watch this craziness that I do. I mean, I have a TV show. I have a TV show where I talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And I have people who like to watch it. I mean, I could have done it anyway. But I have to think about like the 1980s, somebody in their 30s in the 80s who really liked D&D. And maybe they had like a big chunkin' beta cam or VHS cam or even a VHS C rig and said, if I videotaped myself talking for 2 hours about D&D, because at the time it was just D&D and AD&D. I mean, did it ever occur to anyone back then? They were like, I bet I could take these videotapes and hand them out and people would watch them. And then they could like write letters to me, tell me what they thought of the video. Maybe throw $5 in an envelope and mail it to me periodically. I don't know. I think this is just the weirdest confluence of being a nerd, as Praxis accurately points out, and you guys being nerds. And it just makes it work. I mean, damn that pandemic, but I had the camera, I had the microphone, I had the talent. Well, I had the camera and the microphone. And that just kind of wows me. Yeah, what a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. Love that bit with Jasper from The Simpsons. Moon pies. What a time to be alive. Apu, time has ravaged your once youthful good looks. No, sir. Please return to your nightmare state of living death. Let's see. Damien says, eventually White Wolf had to walk back that Exalted was a precursor to World of Darkness. See, yeah. I didn't even know if... I mean, I guess it makes sense if they were trying to say that, look, if he uses that D10 high-minded, low-hack system... One of these days, I just got to roll up my sleeves and take a meat cleaver to. I have an Exalted rulebook, like the first edition Exalted rulebook, kicking around here somewhere. I'm just gonna lay into that thing. I'm gonna tell you something, guys, about Exalted. There's no rules in it. Anything left in there? As I have said before, if there are rules in Exalted for how to do things, and I don't mean like, you don't need rules, Bill, you're the game master, you make it up. I mean just like simple resolution stuff that, yeah, you should have in the book. Give me some tables, give me some formulas, give me a couple of charts. They're buried in 600 pages of Naruto fanfic. All right? Well, how do I roll to hit? In the far-off land of Karmamegaragar, The vampire fairies of the Darkling Forest faced off against the Ice Queen and her sexy snow minions. And I'm just like, God damn, just please, just how do I draw my sword and attack something? It's not called an attack. It's called a wish within a dream. Ah! Please. I paid $45 for this book. I just want to fight and get treasure. So yeah, that was pretty much it. We threw away Exalted from a game standpoint, used the book as a source book, and played a pretty decent campaign using Hero System as our rule set. Dungeon Minister wants to know more about the snow minions. PM me on the Discord later. It took 3 editions for Exalted to get a simple rule set. I can believe it. I can believe it. No, you have to capitalize the W and the D or it doesn't count. A wish within a dream. It's like somebody was trying to sell me. They're like, well, if you don't like Exalted, have you ever tried, and I've gone blank, I can't remember the damn name of the thing. Is another game where you play demigods. It's not the diceless one. It's not Amber. It's a newer one. But they kind of explained it to me, and I'm like, that sounds boring and depressing. That sounds boring and depressing. If your game is supposed to be about gods running around doing fantastic things, and my first thought is, this sounds boring and depressing, I just... I don't know. I don't know if I'm trying to think of what it is. The heck was that game called? It's not worth pulling my hair about. Was it In Nomine? Big eye, small mouth. 5e. That's a good one, Dungeon Master. 5e. That's 4th edition. I don't know if it's In Nomine. I remember it came in a big coffee table looking book that was like literally, if you set that on your coffee table of your expensive, house, you get a glass coffee table, you put that thing on it, people would think that it was just a book of Baroque period artwork. And I don't know if it was In Nomine or what, but I think no, it's not Angle. It's not Godbound. It's not Big Eye, Small Mouth. No. Oh, that's going to bug me. I should know that. I should be able to tell you what it is, but I'm gonna just have one more. Nobilis. That's it. Nobilis. Somebody was telling me all about Nobilis, and I was like, yeah, no, this depresses me. Well, if you were God and you could do anything, like that sense of melancholy, I'm like, no. I'm not getting into it as a person saying, yes, I could embrace the sense of melancholy and ennui. The way you're describing Nobilis makes it sound like a depressing and boring game to play. Not like I would play my character as depressed and bored. I'm saying Bill Sylvie is depressed and bored. If I'm playing a game where I'm a god or a demigod, why am I not? I don't know. You know what? I'm not going to waste any more mental electrons on it. I know what it was called now. And I literally found it on Google by typing in RPG where you play a god, coffee table book, Baroque art. First hit. First hit. So anyway, I think that just about does it for me tonight, guys. I have run my mouth. We talked about G2 and G, isn't it tough? I hope you guys liked the G2 presentation. To me, taking a party of 10th, 11th, 12th level characters in and coming at a G2 alive, or at least enough of you alive to drag the ones who aren't alive back to where they can get alived again, is a lot more exciting than, some airy fairy stuff like Exalted or Nobilis. At the mere mention of Nobilis, he became depressed. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, hit the like button. If you just kind of came by because the YouTube thing sort of said, you should check out this guy, consider clicking that subscribe button, because I do stuff like this, like I said, 5 nights a week. 5 nights a week. How we come out at night, mostly. And we're here and we have fun, and I read your posts, but do click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications. You can click the dislike button if you don't like the video. Leave a comment if there's something that we didn't discuss, a point that you wanted to make that didn't get made. But I do need to take a moment to thank everybody who's subscribed in some form or another. And I do want to remind, if you've joined us over on Subscribestar does not auto debit your subscription until I get 5 subscribers on Subscribestar. When I get 5 subscribers on Subscribestar, it starts auto debiting everybody. If you're subscribed to me on Subscribestar, please double check that until I get 5 subscribers or more on Subscribestar. So now let me take a moment to thank Digital Discord, Joshua Garlock, Lord Corion, Ricky Maru, Mobius, Kevin Reynolds, Doomsword Deathmaster, Mark Simpson, Damien247, James F. Keck, William Smith, The Dungeon Minister, Manny Wall, Mark Corey, Kevin Wood, Todd Sharp, Carnivore Farmer, Jeremy Rule, and Boganora. Thank you all so very much for subbing to the channel, for staying sub to the channel. And again, I'm going to be doing YouTube subscriptions soon. I'm going to be turning that on just as quick as I can get a couple of things taken care of. So thank you all again for a wonderful evening. I had fun. I hope you had fun. We have a guest tomorrow. We absolutely have a guest tomorrow. You'll see the post up. He's a buddy of mine from over in Europe, and we're going to talk about the first edition AD&D scene from the European standpoint, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So you guys have an absolutely stellar evening. I've had a lot of fun sitting here talking with you. Be safe wherever you are. Be well. And I will talk to you all tomorrow. Peace out, everyone.